I got a question for you this morning. Do you truly know how the universe works? Hey, when you came into this universe, were you given an instruction manual? At any point in doing this, were you given an instruction manual? Anybody got one right now in their life? Yeah, I tell you. Well, that's actually what we're doing all 4 Sundays of this month is we're wanting to give you some good parts of this instruction manual so that we know how to move in life, how to be in life. Because there are many times whatever circumstance, situation, condition, whatever, right? It's like, now what do I do? Let's say you decided that you wanted to go have a great fun weekend in New York City. You wanted to go see a couple of Broadway plays, have an awesome meal, see whatever sights you want to see, Lady Liberty, whatever, right? You're so excited. You've bought your ticket, your plane ticket. You're ready to go. You've packed your bags. You've got driven to the airport. Love Field or DFW, it doesn't matter. They both go there, don't they? You get on the plane. Stewardess smiled at you. You got the perfect seat. You're ready. Let's say you're flying first class. How about that? They've already said, "Can I get you something?" You are settled back, and the captain comes on. And it's me. "Hi, welcome. I'm going to fly you to New York City. Buckle up. Are you ready?" I have never taken a flight lesson in my life. How are you feeling in that moment? Do you want to stay on that plane? I don't. I forgot to give you the slides. There you go. There you go. I love me. I do. Yeah, I didn't write that down. Yeah, when we're doing something or someone's doing something that pertains to us, like flying an airplane, don't we want that person to be pretty competent? I mean, the pilot doesn't have to know absolutely everything about how that plane is put together. The pilot, I don't know, having never been to pilot school, but I imagine they may not know about fuel injection and turbine lift and, all that, but they sure need to know how to fly that plane and fly it competently. Or, my behind's off that plane. So it behooves us if we have a very good understanding about how something works, the way it works. And so today, we're going to explore the way the universe works in less than 20 minutes. You think we can do it? Never gotten one before, an instruction manual, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. And so I want to start with something from Words That Heal Today. It's one of Ernest Holmes' books. It'll be a book of the month for us this year, later. Oh. And I want to start with the master teacher, Jesus, and what Ernest Holmes talks about. And he shows us the way in which it works. The master tells us that everyone who asks receives, that the door is open when we knock, that we shall find what we seek. He also said that the gate through which we must enter is straight and the way narrow. Now, some of you may have heard some of these words before. That whatsoever things we would that men should do unto us, we must first do unto them. We must reconcile these statements to the great law of cause and effect that Jesus taught, for he never departed from this law. For, quote, this is the law and the prophets. The gate to which he referred is the same gate that stood in front of the Temple of Solomon. Maybe some of you have heard about this temple. The gateway to the innermost sanctuary of our being, the Holy of Holies within us. In this Holy of Holies is the Ark of the Covenant, the spiritual life principle within us. And in this Ark is the scroll of life upon which is written the sacred word, the name of God, which is, I am. I am is a statement of pure and absolute being. Entering this symbolic temple, we must pass between two pillars, one representing law and order, the other love and feeling. They were called Jachin and Boaz, which means the personal and impersonal universe, or our spontaneous use of the impersonal laws. We can use these laws consciously. They must respond mechanically. The law of life responds to us by corresponding with our mental attitudes towards life. If we would enter the sacred temple of our being, our actions must be based on love, the great impulse of life, and law, its great propulsion. Jesus balanced love and law, the givingness of the divine nature into blessing. Law, the reaction of our thoughts and deeds, automatically bringing a reward or punishment. We must so live that nothing which hurts can go from us. Then we shall knock on the right door. Then our hunger and thirst after righteousness will be filled. The door will be open. The treasure of life is already buried deep within our being, seeking and finding, asking and receiving, giving and getting. This is the law of life. Jesus, the way shower, the revealer of God, was an explorer of man's divinity. The two central themes of his teaching were love and the law, the personal and the impersonal, the divine spirit flowing through everything, incarnated in our own lives, and the automatic reaction of the law of cause and effect as justice without judgment, punishment without viciousness, and reward without partiality. That's a mouthful. Did y'all get all that? That was your instruction manual. But this is the way the universe works. This is the way in which it works, love and law. So let's talk about love. We're going to break it down. Love. We've often heard God is love. Spirit is love. Many of us like to use love instead of God. Well, love wills life, and life operates through the law. As Ernest Holmes shared, love is the great impulse of life, and law is the great propulsion. So this is the thing itself. This is God. This is spirit. God, spirit, is the impulse of love. Something has to get it all started. That's the great impulse. There has to be an impulse to become. We talked about this last Sunday, Dr. Peter and I. There has to be first an impulse to express. And the impulse of life, by its very definition, is more expression. More, and more. So spirit is this movement in consciousness. That's what spirit is. In Genesis, God said, "Let there be light." God, there was spirit, love was this impulse, and then the impulse said, light. I want light. Let there be light. And what happened? There was light. So love points the way, and law makes the way possible. It's the pillars. So, what is this thing called law? I remember 11 years ago, I was very confused. Anybody still confused about this thing called the universal law? Good. Everybody else, you get a refresher. Because you know exactly how it works, and you work it all the time, don't you? It's good to have a refresher. So, law takes this impress. It takes this impress. And the law is what makes it happen. That's what makes it happen. Whatever the impress is, it expresses it into form. It's the thing that makes the creation. So this impulse is received by the universal law, and it does its thing. How? I don't know. I don't have to know every single spot and how the airplane works. I just have to know how to fly it really good and competently, right? So I don't have to know all the hows. I just have to know that the plane will fly if I do this. So let's use an example that Dr. Peacher and myself love to use. She's the one who taught me this. I was like, why didn't I learn this 8 years ago? 7, whatever, who's counting? Let's take the law of mathematics. The law of mathematics is here all the time. It's awaiting our use of it. Did y'all think about it 5 seconds ago? Is it here now? Can you use it? Okay, let's see. Everybody who's willing and able, do this. Good. Everybody who's willing and able, do this. Okay, what is this plus this? Jim Barong, there's one in every crowd. This, 1 plus 1 equals? 2. Yeah, peace, brother. Okay, 1 plus, now, I want to see. When I say go, I want you to lift them up. Go! Look around. Keep them up. Did the law of mathematics say, oh no, there's 152 in here. I can't go to 153. Stop. Did it? Okay, anybody other than if you were at choice, do it again. Was anybody left out? Unless you decided to be left out, right? Not use it. Okay, did it happen everywhere in that moment? Could it happen everywhere right now in this entire cosmos? Okay, did it say to anyone, did it say to Michelle Deese, you can't use it? Everybody but her? She wore blue today, she's out. No, you can't use up the law of mathematics, can you? Can't use it up. It's impersonal. Anybody can use it if they know how to use it, right? They can use it anytime, any place, anywhere. and as often as you want. And in fact, thank goodness, the law of mathematics, I imagine, is used tremendously to build that airplane to make sure it flies. Somebody better know how to use it when they're building that airplane. So, what about universal law? The thing we're talking about, this universal law. We have to understand its properties, just like we just reflected on the properties of mathematics, the law of mathematics. So we have to understand its properties, we have to understand its principles, and we have to understand how to use it and how it works. Ernest Holmes tells us, universal principles are never respecters of persons. I want you to hear that. Let that sink in. Universal principles are never respecter of persons. The universe has no favorites. Therefore it is written, and let him that is athirst come, and whoever will, let him take the water of life freely. That's from Revelations. We get to take the water of life freely. We get to use this thing called the universal law freely. And so very similar to the law of mathematics, we have properties of this thing called the universal law. So this law, again, takes the impulse, whatever it is the impulse is, on the universal and on the individualized. And it takes this impulse and it absolutely makes whatever that impulse is. It can't say no. It can't say, are you sure? Are you sure you want that? You know, have you really thought this through? If I give you this job that you're seeking right now, you know you might end up and you might have crazy hours and this and that, and I know what the coworker's going to do, and I don't really think you want this job. Are you really sure? It can't do that. It can't say no. It can't question it. It has to faithfully reproduce it. So it has no volition of its own. It can't question, and it can't question whoever uses it for good or for naught. All the time in foundations we're like, well, if God is love, how could Hitler have happened? You got a better understanding in this moment? It can't question it, and it can't say no. So this non-volitional nature of law is this receiver of ideas, this receiver of the impulse. And the great news is for each of us here and at home is that the law must obey our word. It is our servant. It must. We have the power, and it must obey us. How does that feel? Powerful. Okay. So it's automatic. It's automatic. It's going to produce it, whether it's good or it's bad. Let's take another example. I was talking to Doreen this week, and she was saying, we were talking about what our Joy Village is learning today. They're learning this right now. And I said, I think of the law like we are all gifted with magic beans. We're Jack and Jill's. Jill, you got your magic beans. We all have magic beans. And whatever we want that is already fulfilled in that bean, we plant it. That's why in the teaching symbol, we sometimes, instead of spirit, soul, and body, we say seed, soil, plant. Okay? So we take our magic bean and we plant it in the soil. Isn't it amazing that everywhere on this earth, it is the same stuff. It's the same goo in the physical form as we are around it all the time, every single day of our lives. This thing called soil, dirt, right? And no matter what specifically we put into it, doesn't it must specifically bring it back? It doesn't matter what continent we're on. It doesn't matter, providing the climate and all that. Yes, 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 I know. But when we put in the tomato seed, we get what? Yay. If we put in a cucumber, what do we get? Cucumber. If we put in liver, what do we get? Ah, y'all were listening. But imagine this, that's the great news. We've got a magic bean that we get to put in there, and it must respond, and it must produce whatever we put in that soil. And it can't say no. And no one is left out. Every single individualized expression of the thing itself has unlimited, that's limitless magic beans. It's like a magic pocket. By the way, I do this with money a lot. I know that I have a magic pocket. Anytime I reach in, there it is. Anytime I reach in, there it is. So anytime we want any creative idea, we ourselves have an impulse. We plant it, and the law must produce it. Now, who are gardeners in here and has ever planted anything? Is there anybody here that once you planted it, 7 days later, you started digging around and dug it up to see how it was doing? Bert, there's always one. There's always one. We don't do that, do we? Because why? We trust, we know, we believe, we have faith that when that is planted, it produces. So this is how I invite us to take up the magic beans from now on. Ernest Holmes tells us that experience has taught us that the subjective tendency of this intelligent law, this law that is subject, this subjective tendency of this intelligent law of creative force may consciously be directed and definitely used. And he says, this is the greatest discovery of all times. Prior to stepping into this spiritual community where whenever you stepped in and you started taking up these spiritual principles, did you ever know this greatest discovery to this extent? How many people didn't? Look around. I'd say we're transforming lives. This is the greatest discovery for each of us when we know for ourselves that we can direct it consciously. And it must produce. When I was in foundations class 11 years ago, and I was taught these basic principles, I will not ever forget that on a particular Sunday, as I was driving to the Spiritual Center in Oakland, California, I happened to notice on this spring day that there were just a ton of bright orange California poppies from my house to there, okay? There were so many poppies, and I started coveting those poppies on the drive. And when I got to the parking lot of Oakland Center for Spiritual Living, I noticed they were all in the back parking lot too. So after service, I went back there, and I just stood there, and I got this I immersed myself in the mental image of this field of California poppies. Now, it's a sacred wildflower in California, so you can't pull them up. So I didn't. I hear you can get arrested. But when I got home after that, I had a 100-foot garden. A 100-foot garden. And it was a slope garden. And the woman that lived there before I bought the house, she was a gardener, and it was a beautiful English garden with foxgloves and, oh, you name it. It was just gorgeous. But there was one thing that wasn't in that garden, nor anywhere in our neighborhood. Orange California poppies. They were everywhere else, but not there. I stood on a railroad tie, and I did a spiritual mind treatment, what we call affirmative prayer. And I did an affirmative prayer for the manifestation of California poppies in my garden. And I let it go, and I didn't think about it again. I kid you not, they were probably there for many months before I even recognized it, but on a particular day, almost a year later, I was standing on that same railroad tie, and I looked out into my garden, and there were orange California poppies everywhere. I never planted them. I did here. Well, I did here. I did here. But I didn't physically put a seed or plant in that. I don't know, and none of my neighbors still had them. Nobody had them in the neighborhood still. I don't know if a bird flew by and pooped a seed. If a deer came from over yonder and came. I have no idea. But that was my anchor to know that this law works. It works every single time, and I've taken it up since then in a very, very dramatic way. So I'm here to tell you that this is how the universe works. It's love and law. Impulse, propulsion. Right? And so the great news is that we can ensure that as we fully understand how the universe works, and we keep working at it until the love of God and the law of God become our two dominant, conscious impulsions of our creative imagination, and when they do, everything in our life changes. And when we consciously remember this, so that we're not run by the subconscious stuff that may not be so good, when we take this up, I'm here to tell you that you yourself are flying that airplane, and you can go anywhere you want to go and do anything you want to do. As long as you can imagine it, as long as you can believe it, and as long as you speak the word and, I don't know, throw it, put it, place it, surrender it, it doesn't matter. Just have faith that when it is let loose unto all of life, life itself says yes, and so it is. Yeah. So let us pray. So in this moment, I want you to bring something, an impulse that's in your life for yourself or for beyond yourself. And just like I stood on that railroad tie, see it clearly, feel it fully, know that it's right here, right now. Bring it fully into your consciousness. This great impulse, this universal life, this spirit, this God, the thing itself, and this individualized expression known as you. and hold it. Don't let it go till I tell you to. It's in this moment that there is a recognition of the one power, the one presence, the one love. That which is fully, forever and ever, unabashedly giving of itself, gives that impulse so that it can have an experience, so that it can experience the grandeur and the glory of this creative impulse. It's what starts it all and moves it into form. I know that this one life, this one love, is a life of peace, of love, of creativity, of beauty, of compassion. This one life is one thing. And as I know that this one life is, I know that I am that I am. And as I know that I am, I know that every single person in the sound of my voice, no matter where they are, they each are too. There's only one thing happening in this great whole multitude of life. And so by the power and the authority of the one mind, the Christ consciousness, that which is, I speak the word for every single person, every single individualized expression of the one, that impulse that is being held right here and right now, fully, completely. And I know that this impulse through the universal law is brought forth into full manifestation right here, right now. Just as a plane can take off that weighs goodness knows how many pounds. This word, this holding of this impulse takes flight. It's brought to life now. I add the impulse of this is a world that works for everyone, where all beings, all creatures, all physical matter, manifestations of the one, are free to be themselves at their fullest and highest potential. I know that everything that they need is placed before them, for there is more than enough for all. The shelves are overstocked with life and possibilities. This is what I know on this day. And so knowing this, knowing that the law works, I let it loose. I let it go. All of the impulses in this universal soil of life not only takes root, but it's made in its fullness expression. And so I just revel in the glory of how this thing works, this universe works, this life works. And I'm grateful to know that we now know how it works and put it to use for good in all our lives. I let it be, and so it is.
I hope you love watching these as much as we love sharing them with you. And to help us spread the message and to keep this going, please donate. You can text. You'll find the number on your screen. You can go find Easy Tithe as an app and find CSL Dallas. Or you can come to our website, CSLDallas.org/give, and donate there. And while you're there, check us out. And when you're in Dallas, come visit. We want you to be part of our community. And we love having you here.